1, 2, 3, testing. This is Regina Clifton recording on February 11th, 1991. Mr. Joseph Kelley, a longtime resident of Newton.
David Joseph.
Mr. Kelley, what was your birth date?
July 30th, 1921.
Yeah, this is okay, yeah. And where were you born? Mm-hmm. And did you go to local schools in Somerville?
Yes, I did.
And you were a serviceman at that time of the event that we were talking about previously?
Yes, I was attending Boston College.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 21.
And what were the circumstances leading up to you being right there at the Coconut Grove?
Well, I was drafted, and I didn't pass the physical for the Air Force, which I wanted to get in, so my next choice was to join the Navy. And I was stationed in the Fargo Barracks in South Boston. Of course, I've been following the Boston College football team because they were bowl-bound. They were invited to the Sugar Bowl. Mm-hmm. And I talked to one of the officers in the barracks, and I was on duty, and I wanted to see this final game, the big BC Holy Cross game. So they got me assigned to Shore Patrol for the game.
The date was late November?
Yes, in November, it's the 22nd, I believe.
Right.
And so I was assigned to Shore Patrol, and I was tickled pink that I'd be able to get in there and see the game. My fellow classmates, whom I had known from Boston College, had reserved a room in a hotel in Park Square.
The Statler at the time?
Right.
Yeah.
To celebrate the so-called BC victory. So I was all excited, and I went to the game. I'm standing there, and I couldn't believe it.
Was that the stadium quite a bit smaller?
That was in Fenway Park.
Fenway Park?
That's right. They didn't have their own stadium then.
Yeah, well, BC being right on the edge of Newton, most of us don't realize how small it was when it started.
Well, when I went there were just the four main buildings. There was St. Mary's Hall, the library, the science building. And,
all very close to St. Ignatius Church, that
right,
area
just
of the campus.
Beyond the church, as you go down, like if you're going on Comm Ave, going down where the main entrance is now, those four buildings, that were the existing buildings.
Yeah, the essentially old Gothic-looking ones, right?
Right.
So you were a young man there.
Yes, and so I was watching the game, and I couldn't believe it. I saw, like, Normets and all these big ball players, the stars of the team, looking forward. They were losing the game. So after the game was over, I went down to meet my buddies at the hotel because we had the room, we had rented the room.
This is down at the Statler, right there at Park Square.
Right. And I went in, and of course everyone with a big long face, and we were quite disappointed because BC had lost and by such a humiliating score. So we had a case of beer, and we were going to celebrate. No one felt like celebrating.
It's a Saturday night, right?
Right. This is in the evening, after the game, and get the exact time. But then I heard fire engines outside. So I was kind of bored, and I said, I'm going to take a walk outside and see what's going on.
It's just about 2 streets over.
And so I went down in the lobby of the hotel, and an officer was going through there, and he grabbed myself and a couple of other sailors, and he said, you guys come with me.
You're in full uniform.
Yes, I have my Navy uniform on. So they brought us over to the Coconut Grove, and we went in with him, and he brought us to the coat room. And he said, take every military uniform you can find in there for identification.
Was the cloakroom virtually untouched and unburned?
Yeah, the clothes in there weren't touched.
They were close it was closer to the front of the building, the outside of the building, right?
Yeah, but so we took all the uniforms out. And then after that, they enlisted our aid in carrying bodies out, out of the building. So I was on assigned to a stretcher with a fireman, and he was one of the first firemen, that arrived at the scene.
Yeah. The bodies were at this point all piled up.
Well, when you went through the entranceway, like on either side, it was like the bodies were just on top of each other, right up against the windows, everyone trying to get out of the building. And it was tables and bodies and everything in one big heap. So, excuse me, there were firemen in there taking the bodies and pulling them out of the mess and, lying them on the floor. And we go over, right, and we go over and they have a body lined up and we go and we pick it up, put it on the stretcher, and we carry it across the street. And there was a garage there. And when we went into the garage, there was a priest and a doctor, and the priest was saying prayers over the body, and the doctor was just making sure that the person was dead. Mm-hmm. And then we take and lay them down. And we go back with the stretcher and a blanket they gave us to cover the body. And the bodies that I took out of there, I could have carried one of my own flesh and blood. I wouldn't have known it, because the clothing was burnt off completely, and it was swelled up. The face was swelled, and in fact, I don't know if you want this. One body that we went to pick up, and I took the arms, and the other fellow took the legs, and one of the arms came right out of the socket. That's how badly burnt they were. Mm-hmm. So there was a certain, you'll never forget, there's a certain smell of burning flesh. It's a kind of a sweetish smell, and once you smell it, you never forget it. So over the years, I worked for the phone company. I worked in this area, and so I had a foreman's job in Cambridge before I finished. And when we had safety meetings, I would start at this time of the year, and I'd start giving the account, and usually the fellows would stop me at a certain point, because you'd start getting into the gruesome part of it.
Return it, tell them to be careful around.
Right. Yeah. And the ironical part of it was that here, behind the bandstand, there was an exit that had a big curtain hanging over it. And here people had only known, or someone there had known, they could have pulled the curtain apart and broken the exit down and gotten out instead of, so that then, one way of looking at it, the BC team, by losing, they all had reservations. They were going to be there and celebrate. Yeah. And so this was Lady Lux said no, that wasn't their time.
You're awfully lucky you weren't.
Right, and it was, because we could have very well, if they had won, we could have very well been in there.
As it was, I remember reading that it was over capacity, whatever capacity meant in those days. Yeah. And it would have been way, way over had the home team BC won.
Right.
Must have been extraordinary for a young kid, 21 years old. 21 back there was young.
Right, yeah.
And you and your buddies were, you were servicemen and were ordered to do it, right?
And this is the actual fact, I have to tell you this, that at the time we were at war, so they had the civil defense. They had these older men were assigned to what they call civil defense. They had areas and so forth. And there was a fellow standing right by where the stretchers where we went in and out. And he had a thermos jug. And every time we went in, he gave us one of those little tiny, a swallow of brandy. Right. And believe me, it kept going. Because they had two big service shore patrol men came along, Navy sailors, and they walked up very casual, can we help? And I said, sure, and they gave them a stretcher. Well, they went in ahead of me, and they got through the door, and they came right out, and both of them eat their cookies. I mean, they just leaned against the building, and they couldn't take it. It was so nauseating.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to stop. Now, how many hours would you think you were there from the time that you were ordered to start working?
Oh, I was there like, I'd say 2.5 to 3 hours.
Oh, that must have been something. As you say, it's probably a memory that lasts all your lifetime.
Yeah, right.
And well, the next day, when you get cleaned up and go home or back to duty, and you read about the extent of what happened.
Well, I was assigned at the Fargo Barracks in South Boston, so I had to be back there the next morning. And during all the confusion, I lost my hat, my neckerchief, and my pea coat. So they came over the loudspeaker, in the barracks that said, any men who were involved in the fire, come down to the supply department and will be issued replacement clothes that you lost. I went down there, Gordon, myself, and the whole barracks, everyone, they all went down, and they refused. They wouldn't give us any clothes because there were so many men. They had to have some proof. So at the time of the fire, there was the officer was over in officers training at Harvard College, and he gave each one of us, myself, the other fellow, he gave us his name and how we could be contacted. And I contacted him, and he sent me a letter, verifying who I was and what I did and everything. And by that time, I used the letter, and I think I finally did get some replacement clothes. But
at the time, how long had you been in the Navy?
Oh, just about, I'd say about a month.
What an introduction.
Yeah, right.
Where did you end up during the war, may I ask?
Well, that was quite, I ended from there, went to Brooklyn. I just missed being assigned to the USS Massachusetts. Instead of that, what they do is they take groups out of the Fargo Barracks, they'd send you wherever they needed them. And they sent a group of us to South Brooklyn, New York, to the Armed Guard Center, which were gun crews on merchant ships. And I really traveled all over the place on that. I was down South America, all over the Caribbean, Italy, Sicily, and then the finale was I hit Normandy.
Oh.
And picked up some souvenirs there.
Oh, I would imagine.
So but I was lucky that we got a direct hit on the gun I was on, and 4 of us had shrapnel, but none of us was here. We all survived.
Merchant
So
ships could not have been an easy assignment.
Yeah. Well, I talked to some friends of mine that were in the Navy, run assigned to the fleet ships, and they were envious because they get on a fleet ship like the carrier or a large battleship, and you were there, whereas you had a little more liberty on these merchant ships because I went to Montevideo, South America, I went to Rio.
Forget about the war for a while. Yep.
Right. And the strange experience was to be down in Montevideo in Uruguay. You probably, at the time, there was a German pocket battleship, the Craftspersons.
Oh, yeah.
And the British fleet chased that ship down. And the commander of
to
the
a
ship
neutral port, yeah.
went into Uruguay, into Montevideo, and he scuttled the ship in the harbor. Yeah. So now all of the German officers and men on that ship were interned there for the duration of the war. So it was an odd feeling to walk down the street and see a German officer with a swastika coming towards you. And we used to salute them just for kicks to make them salute us back.
Yeah,
but
strange in South America.
Yeah.
Well, it's good in the way that you had that type of duty and worked in the North Atlantic. You sometimes in the North Atlantic.
Oh, all of it was, yeah. The only one was down South America. The rest of it was in North Atlantic. I was in New England, Glasgow, and then went in the Mediterranean, Naples, Italy, and Oran, North Africa. All those ports we had. In
the thick of the action.
Yeah, we brought supplies, and then in the Mediterranean, we brought troops across. We shuttled troops from North Africa over to Italy. So it was interesting.
And after the war, at what time did you settle in Newton?
After the war, I went to work because of the shrapnel wounds. I was classified as a disabled vet, and this fellow in the VA sent me down to the telephone company, and I was hired in the phone company, and I signed a card saying this is temporary employment. Actually, I was in there for 39 years, but after I was assigned to the phone company, I was assigned we worked all around Boston, then assigned to Brookline, and finally assigned to, there used to be a garage on Nevada Street, in Newton,
right,
off of Watertown Street. I was assigned to that garage and I worked this whole area for a number of years.
And when did you decide to move here?
Well, after when I reached the ripe age of 34, I decided to get married, and I met a young lady who worked for the phone company in Lynn, and we got married, and we lived in an apartment in Waltham, and then we bought a small home in Waltham and Warrendale, and we filled that up after a few years. We had 5 children, and then we bought this home in Newton.
In which part of Newton?
It's Newton Center.
Mm-hmm.
And
about what year?
That's a good question. Let's see, we're there now 26 years.
Okay, that was getting in the late 60s.
60s, right. And all of my children went to the Newton schools, the Mason Rice and Newton North, and the Old Weeks Junior High.
Right. Okay. So, getting here in the middle 60s, have you? Do you think it's changed quite a bit?
Well, you can see the economic cutbacks, and I'll tell you, you'll get a chuckle out of this. Working here at the library, my wife was really a book person, and at the time we moved here, that's when they were making plans. It was over 20 years ago.
Right.
25 years ago, they were making plans for building the new library right here.
Right.
And she was tickled pink. She made these plans, oh boy, you can go down, push the babies down here in a carriage into the library. And here it is, like how many years later? And she said, now all the babies have moved out except one. So,
what?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
we know the history of the plans of the library. That's a whole other story. But you say you're able to walk the distance?
Over here, yeah. Well, I could walk the distance, but like everyone else, we drive. So.
And how about the congestion? Is it quite a bit different from then? And the traffic in Newton Center, you find it different, more people than when you first moved in the 60s?
I'd say it's increased, but people, I guess, especially in the springtime or the summer, Newton is well named the Garden City. They still have, it's a pretty city.
That's what attracted you.
Right, and I hope that.
And the difference in population. You were new population in the 60s. You've seen quite a change in population over the years, the type of people that have moved?
Well, when I
your street
came
particularly.
Here, well, in the street itself, it's funny, it's changed. Like when we moved there, our family were the children, plus the next door neighbor, were the only children on the street. And then there was another family moved in with children. Now, all those children have grown up and out, and now we feel, my wife and I feel like we are among the older residents on the street. And the thing is, time has turned things around.
But you're still here because there's a quality of life that you...
Well, at some point we've got to do something because here we are living in a house that we had 9 people, and now there's just 3 of us.
It's a big issue.
And so, and then you get to a point like I'm retired now, and my wife works part-time, but you have to try to make some equalization. We don't need the large house. I have a brother who lives in Belmont, and he's the same situation. They had 7 children, and his wife passed away, and he's planning on getting married, but he's going to sell the house because what does he need, a large house? You know, you had 9 people in it, and now he's there alone.
That's right. You were the generation who believed in having it.
Right, and it's a funny thing though. Along the way, we were in in groups of people that we socialized with, and oftentimes someone would criticize us, and they'd say, "You're the reason the taxes are so high," you know. And even then the trend was like, say, 2, 3, or maybe 4 children in a family. But I came from a family of 7, and in some of those days, one of my sisters had 12 children, and she lived in Newton.
But the schools are wonderful.
Yeah. So
the schools, from what I can see, certainly most of the occasion.
Well, it's I think my kids got a good education all around. And like for my son there in the athletics, it was great, with the Pop Warner and Little League and all that.
And the school teams have always had a good reputation.
There's only one thing we regret is no longer can anyone take their youngster down to the Newton Center playground on the toboggan slide.
They have toboggan slide?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Oh, that was when my kids were young, growing up. Yeah. Right by where the clubhouse is.
In Newton Center.
Center, right, on the Newton Center playground, and right down that hill. The kids coast on the hill now, but there wasn't.
But there was actually manufactured.
Oh, right. And
what do you think the last year of that slide was?
Oh, I hate to say now, it's a few years.
I pick up all these tidbits from people.
Right. No, it's a few years now, and one of the reasons they claim was the insurance. Somebody got injured on the slide right away. It was city property, and they'd sue the city. But
now, as you and your wife are still retired, do you think the activities for older retired people are adequate here in Newton?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like like one of my brothers said, "Why don't you stop meddling in your children's affairs?" But we're in constant touch with the children. I have one daughter that has 2 big children. She lives in New Hampshire, and another daughter up in Wayland has a child. And then most of my family, the ones that moved out, all live in the Natick Framingham area. And we're in constant touch.
That's another thing. Nobody settled in Newton.
Well, I'll tell you something. One time, we were having a serious talk, and my son said to me, "Dad, it's awful sad." He said that none of us will be able to afford to buy a house and grow up in the city that we grew up in.
And he's a young man of how old?
Oh, he's 34, 35 now. And of course, he got hit with this recession hit. He worked for Raytheon for 5.5 years, and they had a layoff. And fortunately, he was able to get contract work with this Hewlett Packard. But a lot of the fellows...
They have to travel to where the job was.
Right. But then a lot of the fellows that work with him still aren't working.
Right.
So it's...
He's lucky in that respect.
Yep.
You think there are cutback in services?
Well, they have, like a lot of the cities and towns have cut back on their, on the services because of the lack of income and the taxes and all this business. They have the limit the income, and as my dad used to say, he was active in politics over in Somerville, and he said that taxes, you need the taxes if you're going to run the city. The people that are living in the city have to pay for it. But then somebody has to have the know-how to handle it wisely. And you hate to see like people not getting like the police and the fire and those departments not getting their raises, and they have to fight for them, and they seem to, if I believe the newspaper, they have a problem getting together with the city government on pay increases.
Right. And I guess you
then
work for a utility all your life and realize the importance of these services.
I'll say I know one time it was really, as far as I can say, like the police department, in the middle of the night, my wife tripped and fell on the stairs with the baby, and it turned out she ended up with a broken leg. But I called the police, and they were there within minutes. And this was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So that they think they do a terrific job, and I don't know whether this is biased or not, but I really can't understand all this bad publicity on this police chief Quinn that just retired, because as far as I can see, he did a terrific job. One of the outstanding things was the result of the fire was the law concerning revolving doors
right.
in any public building. And you can have a revolving door, but they must have standard doors beside it, so that such a thing would never happen again. That's the only thing I can
and the other fire regulations that have been for public buildings.
And then, of course, I think it probably affected, too, like, I understand there was a lot of really flammable material, decorative material in the Coconut Grove, and since then they take a closer look at that.
Right.
So that's the live and learn, I guess. That's the way they say.
Something that stayed with you for all your life. Thank you.